differences you have talked about in terms of, you know, a specific church is in this particular region of Kenya. How do you think that influences society or politics? You know, because it seems intentional, or maybe you can even speak to why you think that happened. Mm.
It was by design by the British colonial administration, and churches, particular churches, would go, and there was favor. They favored the Anglican Church, and that's why centers of administration, the Anglican Church was able to set up their facilities. When I talked about the other churches, I didn't finish the list. I'll mention one or two others in various other parts of the country. But for the PCA, although PCA or the Church of Scotland started off as they were together as Anglican Church, and then there was what the church prefers to be a schism, that is a separation, a friendly separation for various reasons, and for historical and Scotland was right or wrong, I don't know, to set up their own church, called the Church of Scotland. And so there is no closeness to the administration that the British government set up here with the Church of Scotland. And the Church of Scotland was a little not allowed. I don't want to use the word allowed. They didn't find it nice to set up with the administration. They set up their facilities apart and preach and give service to the local people, and started to spread their faith from there. So other faiths that were treated as such was the Methodist Church, for example. It originates from England, Methodist Church, much later than Anglican Church. But it didn't set up in Nairobi initially. Their strong point was in Meru. And they were told you go and set up away from the center. But they found it fine and set up. And they are very influential in that part of Kenya. You find that from the basics and so on, Methodist Church is very strong. Now the other faiths, which are Christian faiths, like the AIC, the Africa Inland Church, which is also Christian, didn't set up shop. They were allowed to go to Ukambani, and they set up there. They are strong there. And then part of it, the other part was in the Rift Valley. And you find them strong in North Rift and so on, Central Rift, North Rift. Now the other point which we should mention about the churches is that as the settlers were coming, there was a group from South Africa. The story of South Africa is very, very long, but the settlers who were in South Africa running the government and affairs and practicing discrimination were some of the settlers were invited by the British government to come and settle in Kenya, and they chose the area of Eldoret, Uasin Gishu, and Kitale. And the first group came from South Africa. They took the railway, which was already existing, dropped off at, I think it is Kipkelion, which was that time called Lumbwa or Odiani, there in that area, and then trekked to Eldoret, which they called Mile 64. And that began a settlement. They came with their own church called the Dutch Reformed Church, and started a mission and missions. And as the struggle for independence for Kenya regained a momentum, the settlers were not treated separately from the other British settlers. They were treated similarly, and some of them most of them actually opted to go back to South Africa. But they left a faith, a branch of Christianity called the Dutch Reformed Church, which then became what was the Reformed Church of East Africa, which is you find very strong in the Eldoret area so even today. We should also talk about the evangelical movement because it's very, very strong in the world as well as in Kenya. We cannot ignore and say they don't exist. They do in a big way, and you find the different names and others, but there's an evangelical movement. And this movement came in a big move. They were here in a small way during earlier years of independence. But when the Cold War between the so-called West and East, military led by the United States and the then Soviet Union, they were looking for influence all over the world. One of the areas of struggle for influence was Africa. And Africa became more focused to them after independence, which was in a season for Ghana was from 57, between the years of 60 to 63, 64. Most of the African countries got independence from there. And then the struggle, which was called the Cold War, began. And mainly America and the Western world wanted to use both the strong power as well as the soft power. And one of the soft powers, the religious movement. The first movement they sponsored was a moral rearmament, and it was aimed at the younger people who were in high school. And that movement spread or was sponsored to bring the moral rearmament, looking focus at Christianity and so on to young people. And then, of course, the other churches were formed, all on the evangelical side. And they grew up after independence, after the moral rearmament. We had a lot of connection with the United States, as well as mainly and a bit of Canada. The evangelical movement was basically sponsored and spread from the United States initially, and it came here and grew because it is very vigorous, it is very energetic, and it attracts followers with their bigger and the oratory and so on. So they are doing very well here, and there are so many churches today spread and famous preachers who are doing already that. But we started off with the initial movement of Christianity into East Africa, and I hope we have done a good job.
We have. Quick one, where are the Protestants in all of this? When did they come in?
Protestant Christianity began in the years of about 1500 there. when I think we need to go back a little bit and say the church, when it began after the death of Christ and the disciples, one of the most influential was Peter, Saint Peter, and he was regarded as the inheritor or the main inheritor of Jesus. And he moved his operations to Rome and set up Rome in Italy, and he set up what was called the Catholic Church, which actually means universal for everybody. And it grew very, very strong and was spreading missionary work in the world. But a little earlier, there was a division over practices of the theology and so on, and one branch of the Universal Church split and formed what was called the Orthodox Church. And then that Orthodox Church set up its headquarters, not in Rome, but in Constantinople. That is today Istanbul, exactly there. And they have huge stations, huge influence. And that time, the ruler of Turkey and so on, it was the Ottoman Empire and so on, was constant. And his town, today's Istanbul, was Constantinople, which became the headquarters of the Orthodox Church. And that spread to Eastern Europe and so on. The remainder, which was the bulk of the Universal Church, the Catholic Church, grew on. And then there was a disagreement coming around 1500 there between the King of England at that time and the Pope. And that's a story we will tell maybe another day. But the church, being one, even the king was also a follower of the Universal Church. There was no other church. But he disagreed, not on theology or points of anything. He was a bit, I don't want to describe him as selfish, but he broke some of the church rules. He wanted to marry a divorced woman, and the church disapproved it at that time. And he was a powerful king, and he said, I will marry the woman I love. And you, Pope, from Rome, you will come and crown me. And the Pope, of course, said, of course not. Now, the King of England threatened to set up his own church. And he actually did. So he said, we'll set up our own church and call it the Church of England. Now, so we are talking about, first of all, a Reformation movement that was led by Martin Luther King, who was a German theologian. And he is the originator of the Protestant movement. People protested and against the original Catholic Church. So the first fixture was with the Orthodox Church, and then we have the Protestant movement, and then we have the Church of England, which was part of the Protestant movement. So it grew, and as we have seen in our earlier discussion, when the colonial administration was being set up in Kenya, the first people who came in were the explorers and then the missionaries, sponsored by the churches, which were the the prior arrangement towards colonization. And this happened. So the Church of England was strong in the British Empire, and the only place they were not able to conquer very, very much was India. It was a very British colony, very large, important British colony. But the structure of society in India was not easily able to accommodate new religions. They had their own kings and princes and little empires, so on. And their religion, the Hindu faith, was overwhelming. So the church did not penetrate the way they did to other colonies. But the faith, the Anglican faith, was a Protestant faith, and the Protestant churches, as we know today, they're existing alongside the Catholic Church. Catholic Church is growing all over the world, but the Christian, the Anglican, the Protestant churches are also growing, particularly the Evangelical branch, expanding their.
Thank you. Thank you.